Today, we're going to talk about some of the myths that go along with coercive control and domestic abuse. WomenSV is the only organization, let's say, on the planet that is focused on coercive control, on serving women who are trapped in a relationship with a powerful, sophisticated abuser who uses more subtle forms of abuse, like emotional, financial, legal, technological, and other forms of coercive control. So that's our focus, raising awareness to educate our community, our county, our country, the world about coercive control. We also want to focus on educating young people about recognizing early warning signs of coercive control. It's so much easier to recognize early warning signs early on than to deal with coercive control once you're in the thick of it. It's so hard to get the help you need, especially if your partner has been very successful in turning other people against you. You know, we talk about flying monkeys and how persuasive they are, dropping these little seeds. Like they may start by saying, oh, Susie, she never really liked kids, and I know we've got 3 now, but that was really me encouraging her to try this role. And at first it looked like it was going to work out okay, but she spends less and less time with them, and I find that I'm doing all the cooking and the childcare and taking the kids to appointments now. What proof do you have that that's not correct if her partner is dropping these seeds in, like every now and again, planting a seed that, she's just really not been spending the time with the kids that she did in the past, and I'm getting worried, frankly, a little worried about her mental health. And they look at you, they look you right in the eye, and they speak so sincerely to you. How could you not believe them? Because aren't we taught to give people the benefit of the doubt? Don't we grow up with that kind of belief that people are basically good, they're basically trying to do the right thing? And even though we say don't judge a book by its cover, we do that every day. When we meet someone like this, are they well-spoken? Are they professionals? Are they successful in their field? Do they have a good sense of humor? Do they open doors for us? Do they have a good education? Are they intelligent? Are they charming? Look at all the surface trappings of success. Is that how we are judging our partners? Often it is, because we grow up in a world where we are taught to take people as they present. And if somebody's a doctor or a therapist or a religious leader, ipso facto, they must be a good person. But we know ipso facto, they are not necessarily, in fact, always a good person. That these are, this is the surface appearance. And we have this idea that if you're educated and smart and a professional, and especially if you're in a helping field, you couldn't possibly be an abuser. That's what the outside world thinks. But after working with over 1,200 women here at WomenSV, we are here to tell you that anybody can be an abuser. It doesn't matter what field you come from. It doesn't matter how much or how little money you have. It doesn't matter what race or cultural background you come from. Domestic violence, abuse, coercive control, covert abuse, these are equal opportunity abusers. They don't recognize gender or income or profession. Coercive control typically is practiced by a male against a female, but there are cases with children where women can be guilty of coercive control with their children, wherever there's a power and control imbalance. But with adults, coercive control is by far a gender-based crime perpetrated by men against women. And if you want to read the textbook on that, it's Evan Stark, Coercive Control. And what's the subtitle? How Men Entrap Women in Personal Life. So unfortunately, when you enter family court, we have this idea that the truth will set us free, and that the judge or the court will just, they'll know that you are the victim here and your partner is the perpetrator. But I would watch out for that when you're entering family court, because the truth will not necessarily set you free. Often perjury is not severely punished in family court. There may be a slap on the wrist or sanctions imposed, possibly, but even violations of restraining orders are not necessarily punished. They do theoretically become grounds for a criminal case with Family Code 6320 that focuses on coercive control and incorporates it into the definition of disturbing the peace and makes it grounds for a restraining order in family court. If that's violated, theoretically becomes a criminal case, can move to criminal court, but I've yet to see that happen. I don't think we've had that experience yet. And I think we're still struggling to help it be as recognized and acted upon as physical and sexual violence are, to be taken as seriously. Something else we think about when with any kind of abuse is if it doesn't leave physical evidence behind, it must not be that bad. You know that consent is enthusiastic and ongoing. And any time that consent is withdrawn, it becomes sexual assault. And so many of our ladies feel that they have to go along in order to get along and to survive and to protect their children. And so we want to bust that myth that if even if he puts his hands on your throat, if it doesn't leave marks, then it's not all that serious. We really have to do a better job of educating physicians and the court staff and law enforcement that even without physical evidence, one act can be life-threatening for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years after the act itself. So we need to do a better job of educating law enforcement and attorneys and the court staff to recognize the lethality risk of coercive control, which ranges from anything from gaslighting and love bombing in the beginning to, here, kitty, kitty, let me get you under my control, to physical acts, even if it doesn't leave physical evidence behind, ranging from one side to the other and everything in between. One other misconception I'd like to address today is this notion of putting things in silos in family court, where they will often say, we're not talking about domestic violence today, we're talking about custody issues, child support and custody issues, or we're talking about property settlement issues. Never mind domestic violence. Oh, and that was history anyway. Look how well behaved he is now. And oh, he's going to therapy. Isn't that wonderful? Or you're going to reunification therapy. He's jumping through all the hoops, even if there was a history before. So we know here that if somebody is abusive in one area of their life, they are often, typically, more than likely to be abusive in other areas of their life. And in fact, if a man has been abusive towards his wife or his partner, he's more at risk for being abusive towards the children, not just physically, but sexually. But sadly, if a woman tries to bring that to the attention of the court, we know from Joan Meyer's research that she's at risk of losing custody of her children. If there's been a history of domestic violence, if she's alleging abuse of the children, and if he's alleging parental alienation, with that trifecta, that's the perfect storm that often results in her losing custody of the children. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of this kind of bad news, but we want to go into court with our eyes wide open, not wide shut. We don't want to give the court the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to give attorneys or anybody the benefit of the doubt going forward anymore. We want to have them earn our trust. We don't want to take for granted that because we are the true victims here, that we will be believed and the truth will set us free. No, that and a good attorney and a good story and evidence will give you a better chance of being set free. Some of our ladies think that once they leave the relationship, then he's going to eventually move on, and on some level, he must take into consideration the best interests of the children. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. If he's a typical covert abuser, these guys have long memories, they are punitive, they are vengeful, and that need for vengeance never entirely goes away. Abuse happens in isolation. Healing happens in community. So if we can continue to support each other, validate each other's experience, and lift each other up going forward, that's the road to healing, to recovery, and ongoing safety planning. So the risk never totally goes away when you've escaped from an abuser, and the healing never fully reaches a closure if you've been with an abuser. There may always be some triggers or some moments of vulnerability or sadness in your heart because you've suffered so much from being involved with someone like this. So that's why I say that healing and safety planning are lifelong and ongoing. But as far as your partner's role as a father in the life of your children, if we think about this tendency of courts to put things in silos, well, maybe he abused you, but isn't he a great father? Sometimes even our ladies say that, but our kids love their dad and he's so good with the kids, or now he's on his best behavior. Well, he may be on his best behavior now because the eye of the court is on him. And anybody can fake normal and nice, for limited periods of time. Look how he faked normal and nice when you were going out with him. So these guys are champions at gaslighting, and now they're gaslighting the court, and they're probably gaslighting your children. if they're putting on the Disneyland dad mode. But you know what we say here, that you cannot be a good father if you're not also a good husband, because you're teaching your children how a man treats a woman, how a husband treats a wife, how a father treats a mother. That is the burden, the gift and the burden of fatherhood. And when they start abusing mother, they are ipso facto abusing the children. They are ruining that child's innocence, and they're teaching that child how to behave when they grow up and get into an intimate partner relationship. And they're wounding the child. They're causing ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. If you look that up, the ACE scores, that study that was done so many years ago, decades ago, and people are just starting to talk about it now. But trauma that's experienced as a child can stay with you for the rest of your life. And contrary, here's another myth, contrary to what we used to think, oh, they're too young, they're sleeping, children are so resilient. Well, children are resilient, and we do acknowledge the neuroplasticity of the brain, but the younger a child is, the more likely that child is to be impacted, severely impacted by growing up in a home with domestic violence or abuse, other types of abuse. But the extra challenge that you all have had here is in the more subtle forms of abuse that are harder to recognize, harder to put language on. But without language, how do you recognize what's being done to you? It's all smoke and mirrors. But once you recognize the smoke and mirrors, the man behind the curtain, then it starts to unravel, and you realize it's not your fault, you're not going crazy, you are being gaslit, manipulated, coerced, controlled, pressured, sabotaged. And this, yes, by the man who said he loved you. But this is a man who now confuses love with possession and views women as resources and objects and possessions to serve and to do as they're told, women and children both, and who also often tends to to equate human worth with net worth. And watch out when there's money involved, because money, public image, social status, power, influence, winning, these are their values. And when those get compromised or threatened in any way, that's when the mask comes off, the gloves come off, and that's when your life can be at risk. So that's where, when we, in court, talking about property settlement, child custody issues, and domestic violence and covert abuse, they all go together. We know that here. When we're talking about property settlement, we are talking about coercive control, covert abuse, because they will manipulate, they will sabotage, they will gaslight, they will promise one thing and not deliver. That's what they do in property settlement. That's what they do with child support issues. In spite of whatever the judge may order them to pay, they may stonewall, take their time paying, and pretend that they have much less money than they really do. So abuse in one area often trickles over into other areas. With reunification therapy, it is not a communication issue. Domestic violence is not a communication issue. It's a crime. Domestic violence is a crime. Coercive control is a crime. It's a liberty crime. It's the ultimate form of identity theft because it robs you of who you were before getting into this relationship. It steals your freedom, your independence, your agency, your happiness, your peace, your identity. So we have to recognize it as a crime, not a communication issue. We have to do a better job of educating therapists so they don't try to heal the family through couples counseling, where you look at what's your role in this. Can you use your assertive statements or do a better job of setting boundaries? Use your I statements. None of that applies when you're dealing with somebody that has to win, always has to be right, will punish you for trying to assert your right or you're setting boundaries at all. You're not allowed to have boundaries. He can, but not you. It's a double standard. And for him, it's about winning, always being right, always being in control, and turning you into what may feel like a servant in your home, where you're there to provide free care, free childcare, housekeeping, cooking, cleaning, free sex. And in return, for what? For a roof over your head, perhaps access to the joint account, perhaps not. So in many ways, it becomes a form of human trafficking, force, fraud, coercion, involving the same elements, and with what to show, what kind of financial stability, security to show in the end. Because many times they try to rob you even of your life savings. And court can make you feel like that's happening all over again, where you're spending all your money defending yourself as a victim of coercive control. You end up feeling like you're the perpetrator, having to justify everything you do and account for every little mistake you make. where his are neglected and overlooked. And if he by chance suddenly wants to spend time with the children and starts to go after custody of the children, watch out for that too, because then he will look good in the eyes of the judge. He will reduce the payments he has to give you for child support the more time he spends with the children, and he gets to stick it to you to hurt you in the area where it hurts the most with your children. So these are all the tactics that many of the tactics that these guys use, and it's our mission now to help educate the people that are in our sphere of influence so we can protect other people going forward. So I think that's our educational session for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe, and click the link in the video description to donate if you can to help support the work of this program. For more information and resources, you can visit us at womensv.org.